The stars stretched endlessly before the massive warship as it traveled through the darkness of space. Commander Velrak stood on the bridge, his tall figure casting a shadow across the metal floor. His yellow eyes focused on the blue planet that appeared on the viewing screen. Earth, a world his people had visited 30,000 years ago. The Zalkari Empire ruled over hundreds of worlds. They were powerful, ancient, and feared throughout the galaxy. For 50,000 years, no one had challenged their dominance. They took what they wanted and crushed anyone who stood in their way. Earth was just another primitive planet in their vast collection of territories. Velrax remembered the old records. His ancestors had come to Earth when humans were still living in caves. They had set up a research base in the northern lands, watching the primitive creatures learn to make fire and hunt animals. The humans were interesting subjects, nothing more. They were weak, simple, and completely unaware that beings from the stars were studying them. "Begin scanning for the outpost," Velrax ordered his crew. His voice echoed through the silent bridge. "It should be exactly where the archives indicate. Northern Continent, grid reference 749. Tharn, his science officer, worked at the control panel. His scaled fingers moved quickly across the holographic display. The ship's powerful sensors swept across the planet's surface, searching for the ancient Zalkari base. Minutes passed, then an hour. Tharn's expression changed from confidence to confusion. "Commander, I cannot locate the installation," Tharn reported. His voice carried uncertainty. "The sensors show no trace of Zalkari technology at those coordinates." Velrax stepped closer to the display. "Check again. The base was built to last millennia. It cannot simply disappear." Tharn ran the scan 3 more times. Each result was the same. Nothing. "Commander, I am expanding the search to cover the entire northern continent." More minutes passed. Still nothing. "Should I scan the entire planet?" "Do it," Velrax commanded. Something felt wrong. The Zalkari built their structures to withstand anything. Earthquakes, floods, even nuclear explosions could not destroy their architecture. The base should be there. The sensors worked for 3 hours, examining every inch of Earth's surface. Oceans, mountains, deserts, forests. They found cities, millions of them. They found flying vehicles, massive structures, and technology that glowed with power. But no Zalkari base. It had vanished completely. "This makes no sense," Velrax said quietly. He studied the images of Earth's cities. The buildings were tall and elegant. Roads connected everything in complex networks. Lights sparkled across the dark side of the planet like scattered jewels. These humans should still be primitive. They should barely have metal tools. Tharn pulled up the comparison data. According to our predictions, they should be in their early industrial age. Simple machines, perhaps steam power. Instead, they appear to have reached advanced technological development. "Commander, some of these energy signatures match our own technology." "Impossible." Velrax moved closer to examine the readings. "Show me their vessels." The display changed. Images appeared showing human spacecraft. Dozens of them orbited the planet. More were scattered throughout the solar system. They were sleek, powerful, and disturbingly advanced. Velrax noticed their weapon systems immediately. Railguns, energy cannons, missile arrays. These were warships. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean on Earth, warning lights flashed in a hidden command center. Admiral Kyle Patterson sat in his chair, watching his own screens show the Zalkari vessel in orbit. He had gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 40 years preparing for this moment. His father had prepared before him, and his grandfather before that. "They are here," Kyle said into his communication device. "After 30,000 years, the Zalkari have returned. Activate Defense Protocol Omega." Across Earth and throughout the solar system, military bases received the signal. Crews rushed to their stations. Warships powered up their engines. Weapon systems came online. Humanity had been waiting for this day for 300 generations. Lieutenant Dan Cooper stood beside Kyle. "Sir, should we make contact?" "Not yet," Kyle replied. "Let them search. Let them wonder. They came here expecting to find primitives. Let them see what we have become." On the Eternal Dominion, Velrax made his decision. "Prepare a landing party. We will go down to the surface and investigate personally. Something has happened here, and I will have answers." "Commander, perhaps we should request reinforcements," Tharn suggested carefully. "If the humans have advanced this far, they might be hostile." Velrax laughed. It was a cold sound. "Hostile? These are humans. 30,000 years ago, they were throwing rocks at animals. Even if they have learned to copy some basic technology, they are no threat to the Zalkari Empire. Prepare the shuttle. The landing party consisted of 12 Zalkari warriors and 6 scientists. They wore full battle armor and carried plasma rifles. Their shuttle detached from the main ship and descended toward Earth's surface. Velrax watched through the window as they entered the atmosphere. The cities below were even more impressive up close. Towers of glass and steel reached toward the clouds. Vehicles moved through the air in organized patterns. Parks and gardens dotted the urban landscape. Everything was clean and efficient. It looked nothing like a primitive world. Land there, Velrax pointed to an open area near the city center. That appears to be a designated landing zone. The shuttle touched down gently. As the door opened, Velrax and his team stepped out onto Earth soil. The air was fresh and slightly sweet. Birds sang in nearby trees. For a moment, everything seemed peaceful. Then they heard the sounds. Footsteps. Many footsteps. From every direction, human soldiers appeared. They wore black armor that seemed to absorb light. Their weapons were raised and pointed at the Zalkari. Within seconds, the landing party was completely surrounded. A human woman walked forward. She had short brown hair and calm gray eyes. Her uniform bore symbols of rank. She stopped 3 meters from Velrax and spoke. To his shock, she spoke in perfect Zalkari language. "Welcome to Earth," she said. Her voice was steady and confident. "I am Captain Linda Morris of Earth Defense Force. You have entered restricted airspace without permission. Power down your weapons and prepare for questioning." Velrax stared at her. A human speaking his language. Humans with advanced armor and weapons. Humans who showed no fear of the mighty Zalkari. Everything about this situation was wrong. "I am Commander Velrax of the Zalkari Empire," he announced. "This world was claimed by my people 30,000 years ago. You will stand down immediately." Linda smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Commander Velrax, your people abandoned this world long ago. Things have changed. We need to talk." Velrax felt anger rising in his chest. No one spoke to a Zalkari commander this way. No one questioned their authority. He stood taller, trying to intimidate the human woman in front of him. She did not move. She did not show any sign of fear. "You do not understand your situation," Velrax said. His voice carried the weight of authority that had crushed hundreds of rebellions. "The Zalkari Empire spans across this entire region of space. We have weapons that can turn your cities to ash. We have armies that number in the billions. You are nothing compared to our might." Linda Morris kept that same calm expression. She tilted her head slightly as if listening to something through an earpiece. Then she looked back at Velrax. "Commander, I need you to listen very carefully. Your ship is currently surrounded by 17 human warships. Each one has weapons locked onto your vessel. Your shields are active, but we have already identified 43 weak points in your defensive grid." "Lies," Velrax said, but something in her voice made him doubt his own words. "Tharn," Linda continued, using his science officer's name. "That is your science officer, correct? Ask him to check his sensors again. Tell him to look for quantum displacement signatures. He will find our ships." Velrax activated his communicator. "Tharn, scan for quantum displacement signatures now." There was a long pause. When Tharn spoke again, his voice carried shock. "Commander, I am detecting multiple vessels. They are using some kind of stealth technology. I count 17 ships. All are in attack formation around us. Their weapon systems are active and aimed at our position." The Zalkari warriors around Velrax shifted nervously. They had never encountered a situation like this before. They were supposed to be the hunters, not the prey. Linda took a step forward. "We found your base 12,000 years ago. It was abandoned, but everything still worked. Your computers, your weapons, your engines. We studied them all. We took them apart and learned how they functioned. Then we built better versions." "You are primitives," Velrax insisted. "You cannot possibly understand Zalkari technology." "Your fusion drives operate at 42% efficiency," Linda said calmly. "Ours operate at 78%. Your plasma rifles fire at 0.7 terawatts. Ours fire at 1.3. Your medical technology can heal most injuries in 3 days. Ours can do it in 6 hours. Should I continue?" Velrax said nothing. He was beginning to understand that he had made a terrible mistake. High above the planet, Colonel Jake Morrison sat in the command center of Guardian Station. He watched his tactical display showing the Zalkari warship surrounded by human vessels. His crew was ready. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. Like everyone in the Defense Force, Jake had grown up hearing stories about the Zalkari. The aliens who had murdered humans for thousands of years. The aliens who had treated Earth like a laboratory. All ships, this is Guardian Station. Jake spoke into his communication system. Hold position. Wait for the order. Captain Helen Brady commanded the starship Defiance. Her vessel was the closest to the Zalkari warship. She could see every detail of the alien ship on her screens. It was large and powerful, built for intimidation. But she knew its weaknesses. Every human officer knew them. They had studied Zalkari designs for thousands of years. Target their shield generators, Helen ordered her weapons officer. Prepare firing solution Omega-3. Do not fire until commanded. Back on the surface, Velrax was trying to regain control of the situation. If you are so advanced, why did you hide? Why not make contact with the Empire? Linda's expression became cold. Because we learned what kind of species you are. We found your records. All of them. The logs from your base, the reports your scientists made. We know what you did here. She pulled a small device from her belt and activated it. A holographic image appeared in the air between them. It showed ancient Earth, thousands of years ago. Primitive humans were hunting near a strange building that did not belong. The Zalkari base, the humans approached cautiously. They had never seen anything like it. Then the base's defense systems activated. Bright light flashed. The humans fell dead. The hologram continued, showing Zalkari scientists examining the bodies, then disposing of them like trash. This happened 347 times, Linda said quietly. Over thousands of years, your people killed 347 humans who accidentally discovered your base. Men, women, even children. You killed them all and recorded it in your logs as clearing away pests. Velrax watched the images. He had read similar reports before. Standard procedure when dealing with primitive species. They were not considered important. But seeing the look in Linda's eyes, he realized humans saw it very differently. We were following protocol, Velrax said. They were interfering with our research. They were people, Linda replied. Her voice was hard as steel. They had families. They had lives. And you murdered them for the crime of being curious. So we decided something. When you came back, we would make sure you could never do that again. Not to us, not to anyone. She raised her hand and made a signal. Immediately, every human soldier raised their weapons higher. Red targeting dots appeared on every Zalkari warrior. Here is what happens next, Linda continued. You are going to order your ship to stand down. You are going to come with me to our command center. You are going to listen to what we have to say. If you refuse, we will disable your ship and take you by force. Choose now. Velrax looked around at his warriors. They were strong and well-trained. But they were outnumbered and surrounded. More importantly, he was beginning to suspect that human weapons might actually be superior to Zalkari ones. It seemed impossible, but everything about this situation was impossible. I need proof, Velrax said. Proof that you can actually threaten my ship. Linda spoke into her communicator. Guardian Station, this is Captain Morris. Fire demonstration shot Alpha. In orbit, Jake Morrison nodded to his weapons officer. Fire. A single railgun round shot from Guardian Station. It was a small projectile, only 10 kilograms of dense metal, but it was accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. It streaked through space and struck the Eternal Dominion's forward shield. The shield absorbed the impact, but barely. Warning alarms sounded throughout the Zalkari ship. Tharn's voice came through Velrax's communicator, filled with panic. Commander, their weapon nearly collapsed our forward shield. A full barrage would destroy us in seconds. Linda looked at Velrax. That was one shot from one station. We have 63 stations in orbit, plus the 17 ships, plus the ground-based weapons, plus the orbital mines you have not detected yet. Commander, you cannot win this fight. For the first time in his long military career, Velrax felt true fear, not for his own life, but for what this meant. If humans could do this, if they were truly this advanced, then the entire foundation of Zalkari superiority was a lie. What do you want? He asked finally. To talk, Linda said. Just talk. But if you try anything, if your ship fires a single shot, we will destroy it. Understood? Velrax looked at his warriors. He looked at the armed humans surrounding them. He looked at the city stretching out beyond them, full of technology and power. Then he made the hardest decision of his life. Understood, he said. We will talk. The human command center was deep underground, carved into solid rock beneath the ocean. Velrax and his officers were escorted through corridors filled with technology he barely recognized. Humans moved with purpose through the halls, working at stations and monitoring displays. They all wore the same calm, confident expressions. They were not afraid of the Zalkari. That fact disturbed Velrax more than anything else. Linda led them into a large conference room. Windows looked out onto an underwater view. Strange fish swam past, illuminated by soft lights. A long table dominated the center of the room. Admiral Kyle Patterson stood at the head of it waiting. Kyle was older than Linda, perhaps 60 years. His gray hair was cut short in military style. His face showed lines from years of responsibility, but his eyes were sharp and clear. He studied Velrax the way a scientist might study an interesting specimen. "Please sit," Kyle said. He spoke in Zalkari language, just as Linda had. "We have much to discuss." Velrax and his officers sat on one side of the table. The human officers sat on the other. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The silence was heavy with tension. "Let me show you something," Kyle said finally. He activated a holographic display above the table. An image appeared showing Earth from space, but not the current Earth. This was ancient Earth covered in ice and forests. Primitive humans lived in small groups, hunting and gathering. Then Zalkari ships appeared. They landed and built their base. The hologram showed them watching humans from a distance, recording everything, taking samples, studying behavior patterns. The humans never knew they were being watched. "Your people spent over 5,000 years here," Kyle said. "You collected data on human development. You watched us learn to farm, to build, to create art and language. You never interfered. You just watched and recorded." The hologram changed. It now showed a Zalkari scientist writing in a digital log. The words appeared in the air, translated to both languages. Velrax read them with growing discomfort. "Subject species shows limited cognitive ability, suitable for labor tasks but unlikely to develop advanced technology. Recommend classification as Tier 7 intelligence. Potential uses: mining operations, agricultural work, basic construction. No signs of abstract thinking or creative problem solving." "That was written about us," Linda said. "Your scientists decided we were stupid. Good enough for slave work, nothing more." More logs appeared. Each one was worse than the last. Discussions about breeding programs to make humans stronger, plans for genetic modifications, calculations about how many humans could be worked to death before needing to be replaced. They talked about humans the way humans talked about farm animals. Velrax tried to defend it. "These were just theoretical studies. We never implemented any of those plans." "Only because you got bored and left," Kyle replied. "Not because you decided it was wrong. You left because Earth was too far from your core territories and not worth the effort. We read that report too." The hologram changed again. It now showed the abandoned base. Thousands of years had passed. Humans were more advanced now. They had cities and armies. A group of human explorers found the base hidden in the mountains. They were cautious at first, thinking it might be dangerous. But the base was empty and silent. "This happened 12,000 years ago," Kyle explained. "Our ancestors found your base and everything in it. Your computers still worked. Your power systems were still active. Your weapons were stored and ready. You left it all behind." The hologram showed humans carefully studying everything. They copied the data from the computers. They examined every piece of technology. It took them decades to understand it all. But slowly they figured it out. "We learned your language first," Linda said. "Then we learned your mathematics, your physics, your engineering principles. We learned how you built your ships and weapons. We learned everything we could about the Zalkari Empire. And then," Kyle continued, "we made a decision. We would prepare. We would advance. We would make sure that when you came back, you would never be able to do to us what you planned." Velrax felt something he had never felt before when dealing with a lesser species: respect. These humans had taken a single abandoned base and used it to launch themselves into a new age of technology. They had done in 12,000 years what took most species 50,000. "How?" Velrax asked. "How did you advance so quickly?" Kyle smiled slightly. "Because we had to. We knew you might come back. That knowledge drove us. Every generation passed down the mission. Advance, prepare, survive. We made it our species' primary goal." The hologram now showed human history after finding the base. Scientists working day and night. Engineers building new machines. Teachers educating entire populations about the threat from space. Humanity united under a single purpose for the first time in its history. They built their first spacecraft within 500 years. Within 1,000 years, they had colonized their moon. Within 3,000 years, they had reached other star systems. And all of it was done quietly, carefully, making sure the Zalkari would never notice until it was too late. We made mistakes along the way, Linda admitted. Wars, disasters, setbacks. But we never forgot. We never stopped preparing. Lieutenant Dan Cooper entered the room carrying a secure data container. He placed it on the table in front of Velrax. This contains copies of all the logs from your base. Every report. Every observation. Every plan you made for humanity's future as your slaves. Kyle leaned forward. We are not showing you this to make you feel guilty. Guilt requires empathy, and I am not sure your people have that. We are showing you this to make you understand. We remember. We will always remember. Velrax opened the container. Inside were thousands of files. He recognized the format immediately. These were genuine Zalkari records. The humans had not only found them, but had preserved them perfectly. What do you want from us? Velrax asked quietly. Nothing, Kyle said. We do not want your technology. We have surpassed it. We do not want your protection. We can defend ourselves. We do not want your territory. We have our own. We want you to leave us alone. The Empire will not accept this, Velrax said. When I report what has happened here, they will send fleets, armies. They will not allow humans to be independent. Linda activated another display. This one showed the Zalkari Empire's territory in space. Hundreds of star systems marked in red. Then human territory appeared in blue. It was smaller but strategically placed. And there were connections. Lines showing human influence reaching into Zalkari space. We know your empire better than you think, Linda said. We have been watching you for 3,000 years. We know your strengths and weaknesses. We know about the 17 species you have conquered. We have already made contact with them. Velrax stood up suddenly. You have been in our territory? Secretly. Of course, Kyle said calmly. Did you think we would just sit here and wait? We sent scout ships decades ago. We learned everything about you. Your military tactics, your ship designs, your political structure. We even know about the rebellion brewing in your southern territories. The Zalkari officers looked at each other with alarm. The Southern Rebellion was supposed to be a closely guarded secret. Here is what will happen, Kyle continued. You will return to your ship. You will go back to your empire and deliver our message. Humanity claims independence. These star systems are ours. Any Zalkari vessel entering our space without permission will be destroyed. No warnings. No negotiations. We will shoot first. That is a declaration of war, Velrax said. No, Linda replied. That is a declaration of boundaries. War is what happens if you cross them. We do not want war, Commander. But we are ready for it. Are you? Velrax looked at the humans around the table. They were calm and serious. This was not a bluff. They truly believed they could fight the entire Zalkari Empire and win. The terrifying part was that they might be right. Kyle stood and walked to the window. Outside, massive shapes moved through the dark water. Velrax realized they were ships, huge warships hidden beneath the ocean waiting. How many more were hidden across the planet? How much military power did humanity actually possess? You are wondering how strong we are, Kyle said without turning around. That is the question every commander asks. Can we win? What are the odds? Let me help you understand. He returned to the table and brought up a new display. It showed a Zalkari warship, the same class as the Eternal Dominion. Next to it appeared a human warship for comparison. The human ship was slightly smaller but had more weapon ports. Your shields can withstand approximately 4.2 terawatts of sustained energy, Kyle explained. Our standard railguns fire projectiles that deliver 6.7 terawatts on impact. Your armor can take 7 direct hits before failing. We fire in volleys of 20. Velrax watched the simulation play out. The human ships surrounded the Zalkari vessel and fired. The Zalkari shields collapsed almost immediately. The armor held for a few seconds longer, then failed. The entire engagement lasted less than a minute. This is propaganda, Tharn said, though his voice lacked conviction. Computer simulations can show anything. Linda nodded to Lieutenant Dan Cooper. He activated his own display, showing real footage. A Zalkari ship, not the Eternal Dominion but another vessel, appeared on screen. It was in deep space, far from any planet. Human ships approached it. This was 6 months ago, Dan explained. One of your scout ships entered our territory. We warned them to leave. They refused. They fired on our vessels. The footage continued. The Zelkari ship fired its plasma weapons. The beams struck human shields and were absorbed easily. Then the human ships returned fire. Railgun rounds and energy weapons hit the Zelkari vessel from all sides. Within 30 seconds, the ship was disabled. Within 1 minute, it was destroyed. We took no pleasure in that, Kyle said quietly. But we needed to know if our weapons worked as designed. They did. We recovered the crew. Most survived. They are currently in a detention facility, being treated well. You can take them with you when you leave. Velrax felt sick. The Zelkari Empire had lost a ship to humans and he had never heard about it. How had they kept it secret? Unless the crew never had a chance to send a warning before being disabled. We are not monsters, Linda said. We do not kill unless we must. But we will defend ourselves without hesitation. That is the difference between us and you. You killed humans for thousands of years because we were inconvenient. We kill only when attacked. Kyle sat down again and brought up another image. This one showed the interior of the Zelkari base from 12,000 years ago. Human scientists carefully documented everything they found. But there was something else in the image. A room filled with equipment that looked medical. We found your laboratory, Kyle said. His voice became harder. The place where you conducted experiments. The display showed tables with restraints. Walls lined with tools. Computer logs describing tests performed on human subjects. Not all the humans killed by the Zelkari had died quickly. Some had been taken for study. The logs described their experiments in cold clinical detail. Velrax closed his eyes. He had read reports like these before from other worlds. Standard procedure for understanding a species' biology. But seeing the anger in the humans' faces made him realize how it must look from their perspective. You tested our pain tolerance, Linda said, reading from one of the logs. You wanted to know how much physical stress we could endure before dying. You tested our healing rates by inflicting injuries. You tested our psychological limits by isolating subjects for months. 53 humans died in your laboratory over 2,000 years. Those experiments were necessary for scientific understanding, Velrax said weakly. They were torture, Kyle replied flatly. You tortured 53 people to death and called it science. Then you wrote detailed reports about their suffering and stored them in your database like recipe cards. He stood up and walked around the table until he was standing directly in front of Velrax. I am going to tell you something important. Every human child learns this history. Every school teaches about the Zelkari base and what was found there. Every generation knows about the 400 humans who died, because your people came to our world. It is part of our culture now. We will never forget. Captain Helen Brady appeared on the communication screen. She was aboard the Defiance, still in orbit. Admiral Patterson, we have completed our analysis of the Zelkari fleet composition. We have identified weaknesses in their formation patterns and supply lines. If they attack with their standard tactics, we estimate 94% probability of human victory. Thank you, Captain, Kyle said. Send that data to all defense commanders. He turned back to Velrax. We have been preparing for this war for 12,000 years. We have run millions of combat simulations. We have studied every battle your empire ever fought. We know your tactics better than you do because we had time to analyze them objectively. You fight with overwhelming force and expect enemies to surrender. But we will not surrender. Ever. Lieutenant Dan Cooper added more information. We have also developed weapons specifically designed to counter Zelkari technology. EMP devices that disable your computers. Virus programs that corrupt your ship systems. Biological agents that affect your species but not humans. We have prepared for every possibility. You would use biological weapons? Velrax asked with horror. Only if you force us to, Linda replied. We are not proud of having them. But we learned from studying your empire. You have used biological weapons on 12 different species. We made sure we could respond in kind if necessary. That is the lesson you taught us. Be prepared for anything. The room fell silent. Velrax understood now. These humans were not primitive creatures who stumbled into advanced technology. They were survivors who had turned pain and fear into determination. They had studied the Zelkari Empire the way a predator studies its prey. And they had prepared to become the hunters instead of the hunted. What happens now? Velrax asked. Kyle returned to his seat. You take our treaty back to your High Council. It is very simple. We want peace, but we demand independence. We will not pay tribute. We will not accept Zelkari governors. We will not allow your ships in our territory. In exchange, we will not expand into your current territories. We will not interfere with your internal affairs. We can coexist peacefully if you respect our boundaries. And if the Council refuses, then we go to war, Kyle said simply. A war you cannot win. Because while you have been comfortable and complacent, ruling your empire without challenge, we have been preparing. We are younger, faster, and more motivated. We have better technology. We have better tactics. And we have something you do not have. What is that? Velrax asked. We have something worth fighting for, Linda answered. You fight to maintain power. We fight for our survival. That makes all the difference. Kyle placed a data chip on the table. This contains the full treaty proposal. It also contains detailed evidence of human military capabilities. Show it to your council. Let them see what we have become. Let them decide if they want peace or war. But make sure they understand one thing clearly. He leaned forward, his eyes locked on Velrax. If they choose war, humanity will not fight to win territory or slaves. We will fight to eliminate the Zalkari Empire completely. We will destroy every military installation. We will cripple your government. We will free every species you have conquered and help them rebuild. We will make sure the Zalkari never threaten another world again. That is not a threat. It is a promise. Velrax picked up the data chip with a shaking hand. He had come to Earth expecting to find primitives ready for enslavement. Instead, he found warriors who had transformed ancient pain into modern power. The question now was whether his people would be wise enough to accept peace or foolish enough to choose war. The journey back to the Eternal Dominion was quiet. Velrax and his officers rode in the human shuttle, escorted by armed guards. But the guards were polite and professional. They offered food and water. They answered questions about Earth. They acted like escorts, not captors. It made everything more unsettling. When they reached the landing bay, Linda was waiting for them. She had one more thing to show them before they left. She led them to a special section of the base that was separate from everything else. The door had a sign written in multiple languages, including Zalkari. It said Memorial Hall. Inside, the room was circular with high ceilings. Soft light came from above, illuminating what looked like a wall of names. Thousands of names carved into black stone. Each name had dates beneath it written in the old human calendar system. These are the 400, Linda said quietly. Every human who died because of your presence on Earth. We carved their names here 12,000 years ago when we found your base. This memorial has been maintained ever since. People come here to remember, to pay respects, to make sure we never forget what happened. Velrax walked closer to the wall. The names were organized by how they died. 347 killed by base defenses. 53 died in the laboratory. Each name was followed by a brief description. Hunter, age 32. Gatherer, age 19. Child, age 7. They were not just numbers in a report. They had been people. At the center of the memorial stood a piece of twisted metal. It took Velrax a moment to recognize it. Part of the Zalkari base, a section of wall that had been cut away and preserved. On it were marks. Scratch marks made by human fingernails. Someone had been trapped against this wall and tried to claw their way free. We keep this to remember what fear looks like, Linda said. What desperation looks like. Your people did this. Your science. Your progress. Your empire. This is the price others paid for your advancement. Tharn was openly disturbed now. We did not know. These records were not taught in our schools. Of course not, Linda replied. Empires rarely teach about the people they hurt. That is why we teach it, so our children will never become what you are. They left the memorial in silence. Back at the shuttle, Kyle was waiting. He handed Velrax a secure container. The data chip is inside along with written copies of the treaty in Zalkari. We have also included the survivors from your scout ship. They are in medical pods fully recovered. You can revive them once you are safely away from Earth. Why return them? Velrax asked. They are prisoners. Because we want peace, not revenge, Kyle answered. They were following orders. We do not punish soldiers for doing their duty, but make sure they tell their story. Make sure everyone knows what happened here. The Zalkari officers boarded their shuttle. As the door began to close, Linda called out. Commander Velrax. One more thing. He turned to look at her. She stood at attention, her expression serious. If your council chooses peace, we will honor it. We will be fair partners. We will share knowledge and work together. But if they choose war, remember this moment. Remember that we gave you every chance to walk away. What happens after that will be on them, not us. The shuttle lifted off and returned to the Eternal Dominion. The crew watched it go in silence. They had waited 30,000 years for this confrontation. Now it was done. The Zelkari knew the truth. Everything else depended on their response. On the Eternal Dominion, Velrax gathered his senior officers in the conference room. He placed the data chip in the reader and let them watch everything. The simulations, the footage of the destroyed scout ship, the evidence of human military power. When it finished, nobody spoke for a long time. This should not be possible, Tharn finally said. They were primitives. How did they advance so far in such a short time? Necessity, Velrax answered. They knew we would return. That knowledge drove them to evolve faster than any species in recorded history. They turned fear into motivation. Captain Nex, his tactical officer, studied the military data. If this information is accurate, engaging them would be extremely costly. Even if we won, which is not certain, we would lose hundreds of ships and thousands of lives, and they have allies among our conquered species. It could trigger rebellions across the Empire. Velrax made his decision. Set course for the capital. Maximum speed. The Council needs to see this immediately. The journey took 3 weeks. During that time, Velrax reviewed the data repeatedly. He studied the human tactics. He read their history. He tried to understand how such a transformation was possible. What he learned disturbed him deeply. Humans were not naturally more intelligent than Zelkari. They were not stronger or faster. But they had something the Zelkari had lost over millennia of dominance. They had drive. They had purpose. They had been given an enemy and a deadline, and they had used both to push themselves beyond normal limits. When the Eternal Dominion arrived at the Zelkari homeworld, Velrax requested an immediate emergency session of the High Council. The council consisted of 12 elders who had ruled the Empire for centuries. They gathered in their ancient chamber, annoyed at being summoned so urgently. This had better be important, Commander, Council Leader Krell said. He was the oldest, nearly 800 years old. We do not appreciate being pulled from our duties for minor territorial disputes. Velrax stood before them and placed the data chip into the chamber's main display system. Honored Council, this is about Earth. The humans have advanced beyond our expectations. They have become a potential threat to the Empire. He showed them everything. The Council watched in growing disbelief. They saw human cities, human warships, and human technology. They watched the footage of the scout ship being destroyed. They read the military analysis that predicted human victory in case of war. Impossible, Krell said. These records must be falsified. No species advances this quickly. I was there, Velrax replied. I saw their cities. I spoke with their leaders. I felt their weapons lock onto my ship. This is real. The humans are not primitive anymore. They are dangerous, the Council argued for hours. Some wanted to send a massive fleet to crush Earth immediately. Others urged caution. The debate went in circles until finally Krell called for silence. We need more information, he decided. Commander Velrax, you will return to Earth with a diplomatic envoy. We will negotiate, but we will also position 3 battle fleets nearby, ready to attack if negotiations fail. That would be a mistake, Honored Elder, Velrax said carefully. The humans will detect the fleets. They have better sensors than we do. They will see it as preparation for war and respond accordingly. Are you saying we should simply accept their demands? Another council member asked angrily. I am saying we should consider peace, Velrax replied. We can coexist with them. They are not asking for our territory or our resources. They only want independence. Why not give it to them? We have hundreds of other worlds. The council was not happy, but they eventually agreed to send a diplomatic mission. Velrax would lead it, accompanied by ambassadors and trade representatives. They would negotiate a formal treaty, but the battle fleets would remain on standby just in case. 2 months later, Velrax returned to Earth. This time he came in peace. The negotiations took weeks, but eventually, both sides reached an agreement. Humanity would be recognized as an independent nation. They would control their current territories without interference. In exchange, they agreed not to expand into Zelkari space and to maintain open communication channels. The treaty was signed in the same conference room where Velrax had first learned the truth about human advancement. Admiral Kyle Patterson and Council Elder Krell both placed their marks on the document. It was historic. The first time the Zelkari Empire had recognized another power as an equal. After the ceremony, Kyle invited Velrax to walk with him through the human city. They moved among crowds of people going about their daily lives, humans of all ages working and playing and living. The city was clean and peaceful. It did not look like a military stronghold, even though Velrax knew it was. Your people were afraid, Kyle said as they walked, afraid that if they showed weakness, the Empire would collapse. That is why they wanted to attack us. Fear makes people do foolish things. What made you different? Velrax asked. You were afraid too. We gave you plenty of reason to fear, but you did not let it control you. Kyle stopped walking and looked up at the sky. We learned something your people forgot. Fear can be a tool. Use it correctly and it makes you stronger. Use it incorrectly and it destroys you. We chose to let our fear of you make us better. We chose to prepare instead of panic. They stood in silence for a moment. Around them, human children played in a park. They laughed and ran without a care. They did not know how close their world had come to war. Their parents and grandparents had protected them by preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. What happens now? Velrax asked. Now we build a new future, Kyle replied. One where humans and Zalkari are neighbors instead of master and slave. It will not be easy. There is too much history between us. But it is possible, if both sides choose to try. High above the planet, the human defense fleet maintained its silent watch. They had won their independence not through war, but through preparation. They had shown the Zalkari Empire that humanity could not.